The spoon slipped from my hand and clattered against the plate. The sound was small, almost polite, but the silence that followed was not. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. Forks hovered in the air. Even the waiter froze near the wine rack, pretending not to stare. My grandson's words still hung in the air, sharp and unforgiving, like a slap no one wanted to acknowledge. "I didn't invite you, Grandpa," he said, his eyes fixed on his phone. "You're embarrassing." For a moment, I thought I had misheard him. Age plays tricks on the ears, after all, but the tightness in my chest told me the truth before my mind could deny it. I'm 74 years old. My hands tremble sometimes when I lift a cup of tea. My knees protest when I stand too quickly. My hearing isn't what it used to be, but my memory is cruelly sharp. It remembers everything, every sacrifice, every late night, every quiet prayer whispered over that boy's cradle while the house slept. And in that moment, sitting at a table I helped pay for, surrounded by people who used to call me family, I realized something painful. Respect doesn't fade slowly. It disappears all at once. My name is Harold Whitmore. I wasn't always an old man with shaking hands and thinning hair. Once, I was strong enough to carry the world on my shoulders, or at least my small corner of it. I raised my son alone after my wife, Margaret, died at 39. Cancer took her quickly, cruelly, like it was late for another appointment. One day she was teasing me about burning the toast. 3 months later, I was holding her hand while machines breathed for her. After the funeral, people told me I was brave, strong. They didn't see the nights I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the dent her body had left in the mattress. They didn't hear me whisper her name into the dark, asking how I was supposed to do this alone. But I did it anyway. I worked double shifts at the factory, skipped meals so my son could eat seconds, wore the same brown coat for 10 winters so he could have new shoes every year. When he had school trips, I found the money. When he needed braces, I sold my watch, the one Margaret had given me on our 10th anniversary. I never complained. Fathers aren't supposed to. When my son grew up, I helped him start his business, loaned him money without contracts or interest, trusted him because he was my blood. When he married, I smiled and welcomed his wife, even when she corrected my grammar at the dinner table and laughed at my old stories like they were harmless but outdated jokes. And when my grandson, Oliver, was born, I thought, this is my reward. I held him in my arms, tiny and warm, his fingers curling around mine with surprising strength. I promised him things that day, not money, not comfort. I promised him I'd always be there. I paid for his schooling, his piano lessons, his football camps, his first car, a sensible one, even though he wanted something flashy. When his parents struggled, I stepped in quietly. No speeches, no reminders, I didn't need applause. I just wanted a seat at the table. That dinner was supposed to be a celebration. Oliver had landed his first corporate job, big firm, glass offices, important emails, the kind of job that made people straighten their backs when they said the company name. They chose a fancy restaurant downtown, white tablecloths, crystal glasses, waiters who spoke softly like noise itself was expensive. Everyone dressed like success had finally settled into their bones. I wore my best suit, the one I'd saved for funerals and weddings. It was a little loose now, age steals weight quietly. I even polished my shoes myself, bending down slowly, wincing as my knees protested. I practiced standing back up, just in case. I wanted to look worthy of being there. At first things were fine, polite smiles, light conversation. Oliver talked about office politics and deadlines, throwing around words like portfolio and network as if they tasted good on his tongue. I listened carefully, nodding, asking questions when I could. But halfway through the meal, Oliver leaned back in his chair, scrolling on his phone, and said it, casually, like he was commenting on the weather. I told Mom not to invite him. People are staring. He doesn't fit in here. His mother stared into her wineglass like it held answers. My son focused intensely on cutting his steak, sawing back and forth long after it was already in pieces. and I felt myself shrink. Not because I believed him, but because no one defended me. I could have argued, I could have reminded him whose money paid for that smug confidence, whose hands built the bridge he was now burning. I could have listed every sacrifice like receipts slapped onto the table. But instead, I did something far more dangerous. I smiled. "Oh," I said gently, folding my napkin with slow, careful movements. "You're right, Oliver, I should go." Confusion flickered across his face. He expected anger, begging, shame, maybe tears. Not dignity. I stood up, pulled a folded envelope from my jacket pocket, and placed it beside his plate. "I brought this for you," I said. "I was going to give it after dinner." He barely glanced at it, just nodded, distracted, already moving on. I walked out alone. Outside, the night air was cold and sharp. It smelled like rain and car exhaust and things moving on without you. I stood there for a moment, steadying myself, then slowly made my way home. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat at my old oak desk, the one Margaret used to rest her elbows on while balancing bills and grocery lists, and opened my files. Bank records, trust documents, property deeds, wills I hadn't touched in years because I trusted the people they were written for. Trust is expensive when misplaced. You see, Oliver didn't know something important. That job he got, it was through a company I quietly invested in years ago, long before he ever sent in a resume. That apartment he bragged about, my name was still on the deed, tucked neatly beneath his. That trust fund he assumed would kick in at 30, it was conditional. Respect, gratitude, family integrity. By morning, the conditions changed. I didn't cancel him out of spite. I adjusted things out of clarity. 2 days later, my phone rang. "Grandpa," Oliver's voice was tight, brittle around the edges. "There's a problem. My account, my money, it's frozen." "I know," I said calmly. "What do you mean, you know?" "I mean," I replied, sipping my tea, watching steam curl toward the ceiling, "that humiliation teaches nothing. Consequences do." There was silence, then anger, then panic. "You can't do this." "I already have." That evening, my son came over. He looked smaller than I remembered, tired, older, like the weight of avoidance had finally settled onto his shoulders. "He didn't mean it," he said weakly. "No," I replied, "he meant every word, that's why it mattered." I told him everything, not with shouting, not with blame, just facts. I didn't cut Oliver off forever, I'm not cruel. I redirected the trust to something else: education programs, scholarships, charities for elderly men who sit quietly at tables where they are no longer wanted. Men who spent their lives giving only to become invisible. And Oliver. He showed up a week later. No suit, no phone in his hand, just a boy standing on my doorstep, stripped of entitlement and wrapped in discomfort. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice cracking. "I forgot who you were." I looked at him for a long time, saw the child he was, the man he might still become. "No," I said softly, "you forgot who you were." I let him back into my life, but not into my fortune. That would take time, growth, proof. Now when we eat together, he pulls out my chair. He listens, he asks questions, he doesn't check his phone while I speak. And when the waiter looks our way, Oliver smiles, proud, sincere, and says, "This is my grandfather." And this time, the spoon doesn't fall. Because respect, once lost, must be earned back, slowly, carefully, and on purpose. I